Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. It's Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a great week. Went out and I'm getting ready for the first disc golf tournament, I should say, that I've taken part in about 6 months. If you were listening to me last year, you knew that I played quite a bit. Kind of toned it down this year for various reasons. So this is only going to be my second tournament this year, the first one being, I think it was the first or second weekend in January, and I did not play well. Hopefully I'll play better over in Daytona, but I think I'm starting to finally feel it, getting back to my old form. Hopefully it'll be better than my old form. But I'm out there, 45 years old, almost 46. I'm going to be 46 in about a month. And it's hot, I'm sweating. It's a really good workout. And then you combine that with me going to the gym. I hope all of you 45-year-olds out there find time to keep yourselves in shape as well. Remember, you're only going to be like this once. You might as well take advantage of it. Because at some point, as I was talking about yesterday, talking about Pat Summitt and her getting Alzheimer's at 59 and then dying yesterday at the age of 64, when things start to fall apart and break apart and you start getting osteoporosis and things like that, the time to be athletic and look good and feel good and do the things you want to do with your life, it's too late. So I hope you keep that all in mind. I'm trying to keep that in mind as I go out, practice, and get ready to hopefully win next weekend in Daytona. Let's get right to the show. I have to talk first about this terrorist attack in Turkey at the airport there, the Ataturk airport. I'm taking for granted that's the biggest airport, the number one major airport in Turkey. And have you seen the videos? And even in that video, if you've seen it, where the terrorist is getting chased, he's shot, he falls down, he lays there, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, something like that, and then he blows himself up. That's not a video you're going to see every day, right? But even in occasions like that, and we talk about gun rights and gun control in the United States, and I know that I don't specifically know what the gun laws are in Turkey, but I'm sure they're not like they are in the United States. I'm sure it's much more restrictive. Although I'm sure that Turkey has a huge black market for weapons. But even in a case like that, where terrorists choose to go into a place where there are a bunch of people and all they have to do is stand around and detonate themselves and kill a bunch of people, a gun made a difference. In that particular case of what we saw in the video, the police, or maybe it's the actual Turkey military that guards these airports, them shooting that guy and disabling him allowed other people to run away. Even if it didn't kill him, would have been nice had they shot him right in the head and he wouldn't have the ability to set that explosive vest off. But it was enough just to disable him that he couldn't run, he couldn't get closer to any people, and everybody was able to run away. Now, we know that there are still 41 dead, 239 injured, but had that particular terrorist not been shot, I'm sure those numbers would have been worse. And see, this is the argument that we make in the United States regarding guns. All of us gun owners realize that there is hardly anything you can do when somebody really wants to do something. Even the Secret Service knows that regarding the President of the United States. And I don't care who it is. I don't want any president to be assassinated. I'm standing on that. I don't care if the guy or the woman agrees with me or not. All right, I stand by that. There's nothing good about political leaders who were elected getting assassinated. Whether you like them or not, doesn't matter. It sucks. But the Secret Service understands that if a person really, or a group really wants to kill the President of the United States, there's not much you can do. They do what they can. They scope these places out beforehand. And they try to plan for all contingencies. But it's the terrorist, the assassin, that only has to get it right once. But it's everything that happens after that in regards to regular people that matters. What happens after that initial encounter, like going back to the Orlando attack, that this terrorist shows up, has a shootout with the guards there, fights his way inside. It's everything that fighting inside part, which was a surprise, that you understand is going to happen. It's everything after that that was preventable. Had people had their own guns. So I don't want to hear liberals say, well, if somebody has a vest and they go in someplace, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, maybe somebody will see something. Maybe somebody will notice what is going on and shoot the guy before he can do it. Because here's what I know. If they don't have anything and a terrorist walks into a Walmart or something and sets something off, then I'm sure more people are going to be killed than if a person had a gun, shot the guy, everybody knows what's going on, runs the other way, the guy's still alive, and he sets himself off. The casualties are going to be a lot less. And we realize as gun owners, that's probably as good as it's going to get. We are not going to be perfect. We're not on our guard all the time. But when something does happen, do we have the ability to react, to protect ourselves, to get away, to protect others? That's the important part. Because once that happens, there is some sort of responsibility that goes on there. When you're surprised, not much you can do about that. What this also shows, this attack in Turkey. Now, see, when I first heard about this, I thought that it might have been the Kurds. I don't know if you know this, but the Kurds and the Turkish leadership don't get along too well. We as the United States, I guess we've tried to be friends with both, although it's safe to say that the United States and Turkey aren't as good of pals as they used to be. But the United States has provided weapons and some training to Kurds who are fighting against ISIS. But the Kurds and the Turks don't get along so well. The Kurds have a party in Turkey. The Kurds are considered to be a terrorist organization by the Turkish government. The Turkey government. By the way, it's just weird to have a country called Turkey. That's just weird. But so I immediately thought it was possibly that, because you'll remember Turkey had a terrorist attack, an explosion, 6 months ago? Maybe it was a year ago now. And that one was not caused by ISIS. This was by this Kurdish terrorist group that's looking for more rights and wants to separate itself from Turkey. You have to remember, those Kurds, they have enemies on one side, those being the Turks, and then they have enemies on the other side being ISIS. And then back in the days of Saddam Hussein, it was the same kind of situation. So these people, they've been duking it out for a while. So when I first heard the story, I was thinking, well, maybe it was one of their groups that did this again. But it seems that this was ISIS. And this should show us that it should show Muslims out there who want to be peaceful Muslims that ISIS really doesn't care where the airport is and what country it is and who's walking around in that airport. I'm going to take for granted that a large majority of those people walking around in that airport when these bombs went off were Muslim, being that it was in a Muslim country. Doesn't matter. Does not matter at all. And we wonder about the United States. Could something like this happen in the United States? I guess. I've told you that I think that right as I speak here, I don't believe that the Orlando terrorist was the only guy preparing to do something in the United States. In fact, I would say in probably almost every state in the Union, including Alaska and Hawaii, there's at least one or two guys who are waking up every day thinking about what they could do to help ISIS. I know that's not a very nice thought. So there might be somebody that's in the United States looking at what happened in Turkey and thinking about, well, there's this airport right down the road. And that's why we have to keep our eyes open, have to keep our eyes peeled, have to arm ourselves, have to, if we see something weird, you got to say something. That goes back to San Bernardino. All the neighbors knew something weird was going on, but they were afraid of being called racist, homophobe, bigots. They didn't want to profile a neighbor that had people showing up at 3 in the morning, all sorts of deliveries that we now know was all part of this plan to attack that office back in late 2015. And in fact, as this Orlando investigation goes on and on, I think we're finding out more and more. There are people suspected that maybe this guy would do something. Of course, his wife knew. He had talked about it. And I'd like to say something about that while I'm at it. All of these rumors out there that the reason he did this was because he was some gay guy who was in the closet and was mad about being gay, I think that those rumors have been rightly dismissed. There's no factual evidence that this guy ever had a gay relationship anywhere. And in fact, it seems that it was overstated how many times he had visited this Pulse nightclub. He'd been there a few times. People recognized him. But I don't believe he was the frequent visitor that people said he was shortly after Orlando happened. Once again, people always looking to view this as a way to say this was really an attack against gays, or because he was gay. It's just a terrorist. He was scoping the place out, just like the guy did in San Bernardino, scoping that place out. He was friends with all these people, had probably been to those kinds of meetings before. He knew what went on. He probably knew that none of those people were gun owners and would take their guns to a place like that. And remember, it's California on top of all that. He went in there, scoped the place out, left, came back with his wife, and murdered all those people. And it's the same thing that happened. They go in, they show up, they scope it out. Is this just like every other night where I've been at Pulse? Looks like it. No more security than usual. It's going to be a packed place. Good. Leaves, comes back, shoots it up, murders all those people. And so I would tell all of you that if you see something similar happen, and in fact, I told you of a story back when I went to a writers' conference at the end of March here in Tampa, where as soon as the conference started, she was a younger woman. I'm going to say that she was in her 20s, but she was dressed like a Muslim woman. But you could see her face, but she had the thing over her head, whatever they call that. She was dressed in somewhat traditional Muslim attire. As soon as the conference started, as soon as the guy who was running it started talking, she got up from her chair and left the room. And for about the next half hour, I kept my eye on the entrance/exit of that conference room over at this hotel in Tampa. That's a true story. I told you that when it happened. Thinking, well, that was kind of weird. Now, it ended up that she ended up coming back was completely harmless. And in fact, the reason I think she did that, that was her time scheduled to go meet literary agents that were there. Her time just happened to be right when the conference was starting. But it sure did set off my, spidey sense. But I could tell nobody else in that entire conference even were even thinking about it. I was looking at everybody. Not one other person kept their eye on that door like I did. But I noticed it. And I'm sorry, but that's what we're just going to have to do. This woman that I saw do this might be the most harmless person in the world, but you just can't take those chances anymore. You want to think the best of Muslim people, and I don't shy away from them in public. I see them at Publix, I see them at Starbucks, I see them other places. I don't shy away from them. They're friendly, I'm friendly. But if I think they're doing something suspicious, my heart rate goes up. I'll just be honest. It's partly that, and it's partly that I don't believe enough of the Muslims who would never do anything like blow up an airport speak out enough against all of this. It's like they aren't conscientious objectors. There's no protesting. They just don't talk about it that much. So all I have to say, though, to those Muslims who are trying to do that is you're not safe either. Just look at what happened in Turkey. A lot of those people who died are going to be Muslim just like you are. Muslims who would never think about committing any terrorist act, blowing themselves up, never went and never gave any money to ISIS or never sympathized with Al-Qaeda or anything like that. Just regular people going to the airport, getting on a jet to go somewhere, and now they're dead, and they're Muslim, just like you are. And here's what I can say about you being Muslim. There will never be a Christian, a Jew, an atheist, a Buddhist, a Hindu, any other the major religions of the world who will blow you up. You being an innocent person. Nobody of those religions is ever going to do that. And I hope you remember that. Let's move on to something else. I forgot to talk about another part of Nigel Farage. I think it's Farage, right? F-A-R-A-G-E, this guy this British politician who headed up the Brexit campaign. I talked about him yesterday and how he was gloating. And how I said, that's not really what we need right now. Can't you just win and be modest about it and just thank the voters? And now we're going to really just work hard to make sure this happens within the next couple years. Can't you just do that? And it seems to me, and I think too many Americans have caught up in this, that, it's like there's some point to be made. It's not enough to win anymore. You have to make a point. And it's win at all cost. Win no matter what your principles are, just so you can make a point. That's the problem I have with the Trump campaign, and it's the problem I have with a lot of politicians. And a lot of people who want to win things. Just saying. But he also said when he was gloating in Parliament, let me get this right, that he said that this Brexit vote, it was the little people rejecting multinational companies, banks, and big politicians. That's a quote from him. Is that true? I know he says it. I know that he says that and a lot of people are going to believe it. And I know that there maybe were a few people who went into those voting booths and were thinking about that. But was that really what it was really all about? This is what drives me crazy about politics in the United States. When various politicians, political leaders, media leaders start going in on multinational corporations or companies and banks and big politicians. First of all, a lot of people work for multinational companies, corporations. If you work for a hotel, if you work for Sheraton or Hilton, or what are the big hotel chains of the world? Most of them are American companies. If you are a house cleaner, a room cleaner, if you work at the desk, if you're a hotel manager, if you're a plumber that works for the hotel, guess what? You work for a multinational corporation. You do. And you get benefits from it. You probably have health insurance. You have a 401k and everything. And then some of you are going in and voting against multinational corporations. It's kind of funny. And for those of you that have your money with Citibank and Wells Fargo and Bank of America and all the big banks, whether it's in the United States or elsewhere, guess what? They're all in a bunch of different countries too, and you like having your money there. Money's maybe earning a little interest. They gave you a loan. Maybe you have your home mortgage through them, something like that. And then, but still in the back of your mind, you're thinking how bad these big banks are. In addition, your average person talks about those stupid politicians. All they want to do is get reelected. And then in this campaign season of 2016, what have people been doing? They've been going in and voting, at least in these places where senators or congressmen can be primaried. Most of the incumbents are winning. Drives me nuts. This is the very reason I don't talk badly about corporations. The reason corporations exist, once again, is so people can come together to make something. When it involves finances or money that is too much for one person to put up. That's all a corporation is. So various people pool their money, and as that company uses that money, those people who invested in it get a dividend. Their wealth goes up. That's all a corporation is. And they lobby just like little companies lobby, like independent businesses lobby. That's all it is. Same way with the banks and with the politicians. The only way they can stay in office is if you reelect them. Whether it's in the United States or in Great Britain. Just want to remind you all that before you get caught up too much in your own rhetoric. And you get too caught up in Nigel Farage's rhetoric. Because here's what I know. I bet that Nigel Farage takes money for his campaign from multinational companies. And I'm going to bet that Nigel Farage, who I'm sure is not poor, has his money in some big banks. And you know what? Being that I know that he's been a politician in Great Britain for a while, since the 1990s he's been talking about this, can you not then call him a big politician too? What's the difference between a little politician and a big politician? I have no idea, but that's what he said. You'd have to ask him. See, this is why as I've told you, I think probably people voted for Brexit for all sorts of smart and stupid reasons. Maybe they voted for Brexit just because they hate the French or hate the Germans. Maybe it's a soccer thing because England sucks and France and Germany are good. It could be stuff as stupid as that. And I know that I sound like an elitist because of that, but you know it's true. We all make these big decisions in life, sometimes with reasoning that you look back at now and say, did I really do that? Same way with the people who wanted to remain. It works both ways. And it just happens that Brexit won, even though I believe politically, economically, constitutionally, freedomly, if that's a word, that is the best thing for England. But let's not overblow it, as Nigel Farage is doing here, right here. Let's not champion that this is a win for the little guy. This is a win, it should be a win for Great Britain, whether it's the little person or the big person. I can't help it that the big person doesn't think of it that way. And I bet there's a lot of little people who wanted to remain in the EU. What do you have to say to them, Nigel? Thing is, when I hear the name Nigel, I of course think of one of my favorite movies of all time. This is Spinal Tap. Nigel Tufnell. Such a spectacular movie. Spectacular. So it's kind of funny to me that Nigel Farage's first name is Nigel. So this Brexit thing, it's being blown. It's been overblown on the stock market. It's being overblown by liberals in this country. Frankly, I think it's being overblown a little bit by conservatives in this country. And as I've said, the vote, even though I thought that Remain was going to win, the vote was fairly close. And if you took this vote a month from now, you might get different results. And there's still the idea of whether this is really going to happen or not. Are the politicians going to follow the will of what a majority of people in Great Britain voted for? Because it seems like Scotland's going to put up a fight. Where's William Wallace when you need him? But I think we're going to find that Brexit, although I believe it was the right decision, you now see that it was run by the wrong person. This is not how you endear yourselves. You need, as much as I know that Nigel Farage and all those people who were prominent Brexit people were harassed and attacked and lied about and everything else. I know it has to be difficult. It has to be. But if you want to continue this, and you want to have more wins after this, whether it relates to Brexit or not, you must be a gracious winner. There was a saying at the beginning of the movie Rounders, or no, it wasn't at the beginning, but it was somewhere in there, where Mike McD, played by Matt Damon, talks about his buddy Worm, played by Edward Norton, that he was the kind of guy that didn't realize that you could shear a sheep many times, but you can skin him only once. When you are not a gracious winner, you are the person who wants to skin the sheep instead of shear it. When you are only a gracious winner, the odds of you winning again diminish when you aren't a gracious winner. But when you are a gracious winner and you're modest about it, and sometimes we can see that in politics, sometimes we see it in sports, and we also know that there are a lot of sore winners and sore losers out there. I read a story about Bjorn Borg when his run as the number one tennis player in the world ended at the U.S. Open. I think it was John McEnroe who beat him, talking about sore loser. And I can relate to this at least a little bit. After he lost the match to John McEnroe, Bjorn Borg ignored the press conference afterward, didn't speak to any reporters, didn't take a shower, got in a car, went to the airport, flew back to Sweden, never to play professional tennis again. Now that is a sore loser. When you're on that stage. But we know that we respect those people who lose and still have the courage to go out there and do a press conference, whether losing the World Series or the Super Bowl or whatever else. Likewise, those politicians who lose elections and give statements afterward, do interviews, and aren't bitter about it. Nigel Farage looks like the kind of guy, if he loses, he whines. Because when he wins, he rubs it in. And people are going to remember that. The opponents are going to remember that. And it could be the next time Nigel Farage wants something, his opponents are going to work even twice as hard so they don't have to worry about being humiliated next time. As I said yesterday, Ronald Reagan didn't rub it in when he won the presidency in 1980. And if any president in recent history had a chance to rub it in, it was him, and he declined. I'd like you to all remember that. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Let's move on to something else. I need to get to a story that I've been putting off for a couple days. And it has to do with General Petraeus and General McChrystal. They are starting a nonprofit organization, I guess, would it be a lobbying group, something like that, called Veterans Coalition for Common Sense. Got a lot to say about this. Now, you might not have heard about this, but could you guess, given what you know about those two men, we know that General Petraeus, there's been the rumor floated out there that at times he's been romanced as maybe being a Republican nominee for president. I guess General McChrystal, not even sure he's a Republican. I don't know what his political beliefs are, but for some reason he seems to me to be more to the Democrat side, but I don't know that. But what do you think this organization that they're forming has to do with? What would you think? Veteran Coalition for Common Sense. It's funny that they don't put the actual topic in the title. They are going to be lobbying for more gun control in the United States. Now, this could be a good example. If I was a Trump person, and I think that the Trump supporters can make a very, very good argument as to why Trump is needed if the Republican Party was really flirting with General Petraeus, a guy who now is heading up a coalition, a lobbying group, a 501c3, that is for bringing veterans together to pass more gun control in the United States. These are the kind of things that drives, I think, the average Republican nuts. That General Petraeus could even be considered, given now what he's doing now. It gives them a lot of ammunition. I don't like it, but I know it when I see it. So you wonder, is this real? Is General Petraeus truly a gun control nut? Is this really needed? Are there not enough gun groups on both sides in the United States already? I mean, of course, if he was putting together with General McChrystal a gun rights group, trying to get more guns in people's hands, I'd of course be for it, but I'd also be thinking, do we need another one of those? I guess you can't have enough. But it certainly would seem odd to me, and that's why I'm looking at this and thinking, is this just kind of like a publicity grab and a money grab? Is he doing this with McChrystal because the time is right after Orlando? And all these deep gun discussions we've been having in the United States? I mean, is he being genuine in that he really does care about gun rights and gun control and all of that? Or is he just jumping on this because it's a fad? I guess only time will tell, but that he would even do something like that, either way, whether he believes it or he's just doing it to get attention and raise some money because he needs a job. It's disgusting. And it shows he doesn't have the kind of character that would be needed to be president of the United States anyway. Just like I believe Donald Trump doesn't have the character to be president of the United States. But once again, something like this certainly does give Trump supporters a lot of ammunition. See? You guys wanted to, you establishment people, you wanted to nominate this guy who now is heading up a gun control group. That's why we need Donald Trump. And I'd find that argument to be very difficult to argue with. You have to remember, I do have to remind all of you that General Petraeus got in a lot of trouble sharing secret information with the woman who was writing his book, that was helping him write his memoirs or whatever they were, and they ended up having a relationship. And I got to give it at least a little bit to General Petraeus that she was kind of good looking. So I'm not going to come down on that too hard, but the top secret stuff and taking information out of a secure location, that's big trouble. Maybe it's because of that he needs to manufacture now a job for himself, because he can't get one within the weapons industry because he's a security risk. He's shown to be a security risk. Could be that. I've even read in a couple websites when I first saw this article that there's the rumor that Barack Obama has something on General Petraeus, so he's blackmailing him to start this gun control group. I don't think I necessarily believe that, but that's not the first time that's been mentioned. It's been going way back. That why would General Petraeus, who to that point had been such a seemingly a good guy, make all of these mistakes with this woman? And in fact, I think she's from had something to do with her, and then some fundraiser for the Republican Party, who I believe is in the Tampa area, coincidentally, where I live. But he was such a good guy for all these years, and then makes all these mistakes and is exposed. Did the Barack Obama administration do that? A lot of conspiracy theories out there. So now he's in the gun control business with Stanley McChrystal, who I'm going to guess I think that's McChrystal's first name, who is just a little lesser known, I think, than Petraeus is. It also should show that, and this came up a few weeks ago, that with a former Marine who is running for Congress, who is a gun control nut as well, just because people are in the military doesn't make them conservative. Doesn't make them believe in gun rights, doesn't make them believe in freedom of speech or anything like that. We have to remember that. And that's why I've tried as a conservative to have a more cynical view toward people in the military, even though I know they're all there by choice, and some of them have dodged bullets and lost arms and lost legs. But for me, the civilian at 45, almost 46 years old, that doesn't mean because they did all that stuff that they can come back to the United States, run for Congress, and be anti-Second Amendment. They're not going to get a pass because they dodged bullets for a couple years, or because they lost a leg and lost an arm and have PTSD. That says, well, I should be able to do that. You should go along with me because I did this for you. Now you have to believe in my gun control campaign. That's not how it works. I appreciate what you did. I respect what you did. That doesn't mean you get to brainwash me and can blackmail me for the rest of my life and try to guilt me for the rest of my life. In fact, I think that'd be an awesome topic for a fiction novel. In fact, I think I haven't talked about it recently, but I have talked about it in the past. We can only give these people so much leeway, because at some point you're probably going to find out this guy believes in gun control, that woman who is in the military is pro-abortion, this person over there believes in social justice warriors. All of them were fine military members with all sorts of medals, good soldiers rising up the ranks. They come back to the United States, they're civilians again, and you know what? Some of them are complete liberal kooks. And it has to be tough for those conservatives that have to run against those people. It has to be difficult. It can't be easy, given the circumstances. But there's another point that I want to make about this, and that is the title that Petraeus and McChrystal picked for their group. You notice that there's no word of gun control in it. It's not The title of their organization is not Veterans Coalition for Common Sense Gun Control. It's Veterans Coalition for Common Sense. You've heard me talk about common sense on this show before. You'll notice that I don't talk a lot about common sense on this show, even though that is a phrase that is used, I believe, in a lot of other conservative shows. The truth is this: I'm not a big believer in common sense. And not because it's been so distorted and people act stupid when they should make good decisions, they make bad decisions, and somebody says, "Where's your common sense?" The truth is this: for the world to run right and for people to be able to do things, common sense is not enough. In fact, the reason that they use common sense in this title of this is because everybody, it's like a brainwash word. I mean, who can argue with common sense? The truth is this: in many things in life, it's not common sense that works. You actually have to know something. You actually have to study something. You have to watch a video. You have to read something. Somebody has to teach you. You go to school. You go to class. There are many things in the world that no amount of common sense is going to teach you. And in fact, when it comes to gun rights and gun control, that is one of the supreme examples of how common sense doesn't work. There's more to it than just saying we'll have the common sense position is, well, if we don't want anybody to shoot anybody, we just don't have to have any guns. That's the common sense position. Whereas it's counterintuitive is what is actually true. What's actually true is if you ban guns, there's going to be somebody that's going to figure out how to make a gun, and then they're going to be the ruler of the earth. What that means is everybody else should have guns too. But that's not what common sense teaches you. Same way with taxes. The idea is all we have to do is raise more taxes is to increase the percentage rate. We want to get more income tax from people, we'll take it up from 30 to 35 to 40 to 50. It's not what happens. The Laffer curve proves that. The more you tax people, the less they want to work. The less they're going to do things, the less they're going to do in any of those jobs that get taxed. Common sense doesn't teach you that. Learning about economics teaches you that. And I would warn all of you that any time that you get into a political discussion with somebody that starts talking about common sense, I would say, you know what, that person just can't convince you of something otherwise. Well, it's just common sense. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's not. Maybe you do. Maybe there isn't anything within your mind that can figure that out because you just don't know anything about the topic. There's no way that you can figure out some of the things that go on in physics without taking a class. Common sense is not going to tell you how fast an object drops from the sky. It's not going to tell you that. Common sense may tell you that if you jump off a high building, you're going to die. But if you actually have to calculate things and get into the minutia of why this works and why that doesn't work, you actually have to know something. But there's a reason that they pick something like the Veteran Coalition for Common Sense. First of all, they're probably hoping that a lot of veterans aren't even going to look into what they're doing. They're going to say, oh, McChrystal and Petraeus are heading it up. Oh, I got to give some money. And then they find out, some people are going to find out too late that it's a gun control group. And that's probably what they're hoping. But also they use that common sense word is because we've become so susceptible to the phrase. I'm telling you, common sense is overrated in many things in life. The reason I think also that people want to just use common sense is people are lazy. They don't want to go and read a whole book about gun rights. They don't want to read a whole book like the Federalist Papers. They don't want to read a basic economics book by Thomas Sowell because people are lazy. People cut corners. People take shortcuts. It's one more reason that I'm not a big believer in referendums. You have a bunch of people like that who are relying on common sense to make decisions in politics where really they need to study the issues. There's no amount of common sense that is going to teach them that. They have to read about it. Most people don't want to take the time to do that. That's why I think referendums, put them in the hands of the people, it's just unpredictable what they're going to do. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and a lot of the decisions they're going to make are counterproductive. They're going to make one decision over here one year, and then the next year they're going to want to pass something that's complete opposite of what they did the year before. It's one more reason I'm against populism, because populism is also just another version of trying to rule by common sense. If gun rights and religious rights and freedom of association and all the rest of them were common sense, they wouldn't be in the Bill of Rights. The reason they had to be put in there is because they knew, the Founding Fathers knew, that too many people thought that it was the opposite that was common sense. That only one religion should be respected. That only the government should have freedom of speech. That no person should have any guns. That was the common sense position back then. They needed to say that there was a better way to do things, and they had to write it out. Remember that. Let's move on to something else. Going to get away from politics at least a little bit, and that has to do with the Olympics that are presumably going to be taking place in Rio. I don't even know when it starts. I know it's within the next couple months. I have no idea what the date is. And I just want you to say, before I say anything, I am a fan of the Olympics. I was listening to sports radio from Pittsburgh yesterday, and Paul Zeiss there, who is a guy I generally like, he was going on and on about how he hates the Olympics. I like the Olympics, but I don't like what they're doing here. The truth is this, is that both that and the World Cup, how cities or countries get the Olympics or the World Cup, Soccer World Cup, is so fraudulent. There's so much fraud and greasing of the palms and all of that it's disgusting. And it should be known that the reason that the United States didn't get the World Cup in 2022, it's going to be in Qatar, is because the United States wouldn't commit fraud like Qatar did. And I've tried to tell you this regarding politics. We have fraud in the United States. We have a lot of hucksters in the United States. It's nothing compared to other large countries in the world. Our amount of fraud and hucksterism and corruption is nothing compared to China, India, Russia, Brazil, the rest of them. Nothing. Just remember that. The United States lost to Qatar for that exact reason. Qatar cheated. Likewise, the reason that, remember, this Olympics, I believe, was supposed to be held in Chicago. Remember that? Chicago was trying to get the Summer Olympics. Was it this one? Well, Chicago didn't get it, and all of us conservatives were so dang happy. Wasn't it this Olympics? That was in 2010, right? Or maybe it was the next one. The reason Chicago didn't get it, as corrupt as Chicago is, some other guy, some other country, some other city greased the palm of the Olympic Committee even more. My attitude toward the Olympics and the World Cup, even though I'm not a huge fan of soccer, is that they all should just be held in the United States. But they don't do that. Why? Because because the Olympic Committee and the World Cup Committee are nothing but a bunch of socialists, and more socialism, more corruption. They want to spread the wealth around, which means you end up having the Olympics in a country where they have a virus that you can get and you don't even know you have it until you have kids and your baby comes out and there's something wrong with it. The Zika virus. And all of the production delays, building this, building that. This is what happens when you spread the wealth around. We know that liberals love the Olympics. All the world getting together and just smiling. Oh, the world is one. It's one of the most corrupt businesses, sports businesses in the world. In fact, the Russian Hockey Federation looks at the Olympics and says, dang. But this was what it means. Rio had to get it. It was spread the wealth around. They had the World Cup. Now they're getting the Olympics. And remember, Brazil is seen as somewhat of a modern country. They have big airports. They have businesses. They have huge cities. And here we have with the Olympics, and a lot of athletes aren't even going to go. Predominantly golfers. But there are other athletes who said they're not going because of the fears they have in that. Not to mention, can Brazil protect the athletes from a terrorist attack? But see, we can't have everything in the United States. We have the infrastructure, we have the airports, we have the highways, we have the hotels. We wouldn't have to build anything. We wouldn't have to create a road, nothing. You could just come to the United States and hold the Olympics every 4 years, summer or winter, and everything would always be here. But this is socialism. Taking money from a bunch of other countries, giving it to Rio so they can look good and say, hey, we're having Olympics, look at us. In the end, once the Olympics are over, just like in China, even in China, a lot of those venues that for the Summer Olympics in 2008 have never been used again. Just building projects. I guess the Olympics is the world version of shovel-ready jobs. Just complete waste of money putting it into these other countries. Complete waste of money. But nobody wants to talk about that because you start talking bad about China and what they do, and what Brazil does, and all of this. You're just anti-world. You're just some greedy American. The truth is, the Olympics would be cheaper if they were held here every 4 years. That's a fact. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. The athletes, the language, the transportation, the food, viruses, nothing. Can't do that. It's so corrupt. It's so bad. And I don't know, if I was an athlete that could be in the Olympics, and would I go to Rio? I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I'm just going to be honest with that. I'd have to think about it. One more thing before I go. I saw these battleground polls that were conducted in Florida, Iowa, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia. If you want to believe them, I know there's a Quinnipiac poll saying that Trump has cut Hillary's lead, but in those battleground states, Trump is getting killed. You know who wouldn't get killed in those states? John Kasich wouldn't get, and I'm no John Kasich, but just saying. Also, Paul Ryan was polled against Hillary Clinton. He wouldn't get killed in those battleground states either. What do you have to say about that, Trump people? But I got to go. You can go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Find me on Facebook, LinkedIn. Email me, edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain. My books are back up on Amazon, my Govicide series. I urge you to check those out, Govicide. My other book, Distant, is up there again now. Posted them within the last couple days. My other show, which is doing gangbusters, America's Missing Podcast, the show I do with Melissa Bridges, Disappeared Missing Persons show. You can find it at Podomatic, iTunes, and Stitcher. I urge you to listen to the show and give us a great review. We'd really, really appreciate that. Have a nice night. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.